Hi everyone, today we're going to take a look at a new light from GVM. It's their SD300B RO. This is a 300 watt bicolor LED light that produces a very high quality light for content creators and professionals alike. Now GVM has always produced very high quality lighting at competitive pricing, and I think that's why they've been a fast growing, very successful company in the lighting solutions space. And before we get started, I'd like to thank GVM for sending this light out to me for review at no cost to myself. But as always, I'll give you my honest and fair opinion. Now, the RO is a new series in their lineup that is geared towards content creators. So basically what they've done is they've made it more portable, lighter weight, and they've also simplified the user interface. And being a new series, I'll go over some of the updates in the technology as well as some of the improvements in the overall design. Now, right out of the box, we have a few improvements we can talk about. They have this newly designed reflector here, which is much larger and has much more focused light than the typical 7-inch reflectors that you get with LED lighting. You get the SD300B RO here, which also has some design enhancements, which I'll go over here in a minute. You get the yoke here, so you can mount it onto your light stand, which does allow for a full 360 rotation. And also you get a really nice long extension cord here, which I measure to be around 18 or 19 feet or between 5 and 6 meters, something like that, but it's very, very long. Now, what's interesting and what's not included, and is a big improvement actually, is there's no power brick needed to power this light separately. All you need is this very long cord that they provided, and the cord has a standard 3-pin plug here on the end here. So if this ever goes bad or you lose it, it's very, very easy to replace and find anywhere online. Now, looking at the overall design and construction of the light, in the center here we have an aluminum alloy casing here, which helps with the cooling and long-term durability of the light. We have plastic front and rear caps here. On the front here is a standard Bowens mount, which of course is the industry standard, so you have access to thousands of lighting modifiers. And then inside here we have the COB or chip on board LED lighting element, and there is a protective cover here on the front so that you can't actually touch the LED elements themselves. And this is useful, of course, because you don't want to ever touch the LED elements. But also, a lot of times if you're using this outdoors, particularly if you're doing bare bulb, bugs like to fly into these things, and this will also help protect the LED elements from any kind of damage like that. Then coming over here to the rear, they've also simplified the interface here, say from their Pro series, where you have just a single clickable knob here, a button here for the deeper menus, and then also we have a physical on-off switch, so we can quickly turn the light on or off, or just leave it in an on position. There's a studio mode so that it'll remember the last setting you left it at, so that when the light powers back on, you don't have to actually change or access the controls. It'll just come on at the same setting that you used before. Then right here in the middle we have a LCD display, which is color, and we'll talk about this more when we get into the fine print. But looking at the yoke now, this is of course all metal construction, but the yoke here, right where it mounts, we have little metal teeth in here so that when you position the light, it's not going to move. So let me just tighten this or put it to a new position. Let's say I want to point it, say, in an upward position. I'll just tighten it down on both sides, and the metal teeth here lock it so it will not tilt or droop, which can tend to happen on a lot of other mounting systems that I've seen, where if I put on a large modifier onto the front, the LED lighting might start to droop over time, and that's not going to happen with this one. Now, another thing I really like is the way they designed the cooling system. So if we go to the bottom, you can see we have a very large fan here for cooling, and this is an intelligent fan, so it's going to adjust automatically depending on the heat, and it's virtually silent even when it's at full blast. And on the top here, you might be able to see the very large heat sinks that they have behind the grate here. What I like about the design is that it naturally draws cool air from the bottom and then expels it through the top, because heat rises. So this is a very smart way to do this, because I've seen other LED lighting where they have the vents on the side or even on the bottom, which just makes no sense to me. And another advantage to that, so that the fan doesn't have to work as hard to keep the device cool. But when you turn the light off, the fans turn off. And this is going to allow the light to cool down naturally on its own much faster than it would otherwise. All right, so let's take a quick look at some of the specs and the menu system here. As I mentioned before, it's a very simplified interface. I can control most of the things I need to with just this one knob here. So if I want to change the intensity, I can do that in a step list, tenths of a percent. So I would just click on the knob and then just increase it slowly like this. And if I want to make a quick jump in brightness, I can just kind of flick it very quickly. And in just a few clicks, I can be up to 100%. And if I want to get back down to 0, I just turn it very quickly. But if I want to go much slower, I can just do it in tenths of a percent by turning the knob slowly. And then once I've set the temperature that I want, I just click on it, and then I can go down here and I can set the Kelvin temperature, and I've arranged between 2700 and 6800. So a very warm light, so I can match it to maybe some indoor tungsten lighting that might be in the room. Or if I'm outdoors, I'll go to 5600 to 6800 Kelvin for that much cooler or natural daylight. This light also has 12 special effects modes, so I can easily access those by just pushing and holding the knob here. And now I have access to 12 different special effects. And I can just rotate the dial to pick the one that I want. So if I want a pulsating one like this, where it just brightens and dims the light in a stepless fashion, I'll click there. And then I can adjust the intensity the same way I did with the CCT mode. And I can even adjust the Kelvin temperature if I need to. And then the speed or the rate. And then this button here is mainly for accessing sort of, different settings that you don't normally need to get to, like the language, the Bluetooth control, setting the fan. The fan, I would just leave it in smart mode. I can set it to high if I want to, so I'll set it to high. And I'll just stay silent for a second. And I can't hear it because I'm sitting right next to it, but if this is, maybe 1 or 2 meters away in a light modifier, you'll never hear this fan in your videos. All right, so the light has been updated to Bluetooth 5.0, and we have mesh control via this new app called GVM Link. And usually when I turn the light on, it'll just automatically connect to the app like this. If not, I can click on reconnect. And then I have shortcuts here to Kelvin temperatures that I'd want to use, 5600 or say 3200. And you can see the temperature changes very quickly. I can adjust the intensity of the light here. And then I can also manually control the Kelvin temperature just using my finger here by touch. Also, I can turn the light on and off, like so. And then if I want to access the special effect modes, I just go into Scene FX, and then I can select lightning, for example, select a very high rate. Let's have it, relatively bright. And then to see the special effect, I just push play, like that. And now the special effects for lightning is playing. Generally speaking, when it comes to LED lighting, I always say buy the most powerful light you can afford, especially if this is going to be your first light. And I think 300 watts is a good starting point because you can kind of get away with maybe the 1600 watt lights, for smaller, dark studios. But that said, as you expand in your photography, videography, filmography, you're really going to need more powerful lights. All right, now I want to give you some examples of using this LED light outdoors. And to power the light, I just got this 300 watt power supply that has a standard AC mains here that I can plug into, and it'll run this LED light for an hour at full power. Now, typically you don't need to run the light at full power, but let me show you what it looks like using various modifiers. All right, so let's start out with no lighting at all. It's partly cloudy, but it's midday, and you can see the lighting's very flat. It's not very flattering. However, if I turn on the 300 arrow here, you can see that the lighting is so much better. It's subtle, but it's a big improvement. And I have the light power here set to just 50%, so I can run this light for a couple hours on that little power supply I showed you. Now in this scene here, I added the GVM 24-inch softbox, and the light is going to be a little softer. The quality of the light should be the same, and you can see overall the image is very, very nice. Much better than with no light at all. However, I had to turn the light up to 100% to get this, so I'm running at the full 300 watts. All right, now let's try it with this reflector, and as you can see, this reflector is pretty big, say, compared to the standard 7-inch reflector bowls that you get with most LED lighting. This reflector, I feel like, was specially designed for this light because it just really projects and outputs so much light that if you look at this scene here, the lighting is a little bit harder, but it looks a lot better, and I only had to turn the light to 10% power. So theoretically, I could run this light for several hours using this reflector outdoors with that simple power supply. All right, so let's do a product photography shot, and I'm going to show you how you can get 3 different looks very quickly just using this one light. And I think LED lighting in general is very conducive to still life photography, like product photography, portraits, etc. Because all the changes you make, say, in the intensity or direction and distance of the lighting, is you can see it in real time on the back of your screen, even before you take a picture. And unlike flash photography, where you set up your lighting, you take a test shot, then you have to adjust your exposure, you change settings on the camera and or flash, take another shot to verify. Maybe something wasn't quite right, so you make another change, take another test shot, etc. And sometimes it can take 3 or 4 test shots before you get it just right. And then when you want to change the direction of the lighting, say you want to get a different angle or shadow on the subject, you may have to do that whole process all over again. So LED lighting, I think, is a much better or much faster workflow when you're doing this kind of photography. All right, so first let's just do a basic ambient light shot, and I'm going to show you my settings. I'm going to be in aperture priority at f5.6, ISO 200, and I set up a 2-second timer delay. We're just going to use the regular ISP or average metering. And then I set the white balance to 5600K because that's what I have all the lights set at. I think we're ready to go, so let's just take a picture here. Okay, that looks pretty good. We got nice soft lighting because I'm using a softbox behind me for the video. But let's go ahead and turn on the RO light. And I like to start at about 50% power, and then I can just increase it or decrease it as needed. From there, it gives me a little wiggle room. All right, very good. And by default, the exposure is clearly clipping all of the highlights on the silver here. So all I need to do really is just dial in some negative exposure comp until I see what I want. I don't want to dial in more than 2 stops generally, so I can keep the image clean if I need to make any adjustments in post-processing. But it looks like about 1 1/3 stop is about right. Looking at the background, I can either adjust it so I get mostly a white background or gray background, or I can move the light over and get some gradation here from dark to gray. And I kind of like how that looks right there. And I'm going to move my focus point up just a tiny bit. And we'll take a picture there. Because I'm at f5.6, I got plenty of depth of field, but I like to move the focus point somewhere in the middle. All right, so that looks pretty good. Now, if I wanted to have, say, a darker background in general, almost black maybe, I can certainly do that by just turning the light just a little bit more. And now we got almost a completely background because I'm directing the light away from the background and mostly just on the camera there. Let me just dial in one more, or just a little bit more exposure comp, 1/3 of a stop. I have a very low-key shot here. Okay, that looks good. We'll do one more shot. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to bring in a reflector on this side just to bounce a little bit more light onto the camera to fill in the shadows over here on the side. And all I have to do is look at the screen to see the difference, because now I'm getting more light here on the prism and a little bit more light in the front there. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, and then I like that gradation in the background rather than it being kind of all black. So I'm going to move the light back over to here to get that gradation back. And let's see, let me check the exposure. Maybe just add that 1/3 of a stop back in. And we'll go with that. All right, awesome. All right, so let's do a couple of portrait shots. And for the first one, I want a little bit more dramatic lighting. So I'm going to stick to the reflector bowl here. But again, what you see is what you get. So I'm going to adjust the lighting so it points right about here, but also gives me sort of a little bit of a halo behind me or graduated lighting. So let's go ahead and turn the light on. And I'm going to turn the brightness way down, because this is actually one of the downsides of LED lighting and doing portraits is sometimes they're so bright and your model might start to squint or have some problems there. So when you're doing direct lighting like this, generally use as low a power as you can. With a softbox, you have a little more flexibility because the light's spread out. But with this, I'm actually going to dial it down. I'm at 0.5%. But you can see it's making quite a bit of difference here. And all I have to do is just kind of adjust it. I'm going to look at the screen here. I want it to be right about there. Because I can kind of go up a little higher. That might be too high. Because down below here, you can see, you know, where the backdrop stops. Now I could rotate this around so it goes all the way to the floor, but we don't need to do that for this shot because this will be almost completely black down here. All right, so let's go ahead and start the self-timer here. All right, those look pretty good. So I'm going to switch over to a softbox. Usually it's easier to put these on when the light is on the ground. Okay, for this shot I'm going to stand. Because the light is spreading out, we're now seeing the bottom of the backdrop where it falls off. So if I stand, we don't have to worry about that. Now when I'm using softboxes, generally I like the bottom of the softbox to be right about where my lip or my nose is. So that way I guarantee I get a catch light in my eyes. Because if it's too high, you might lose the catch light in one or both eyes. It's still just a bit too low, so I'm going to raise it up a little more. Okay, so that's good. That's right about where my nose or lip is. And I'm going to adjust it. So overall, I think the Aero series is a great addition to their already vast array of lighting products. And if I had to give it any criticisms at all, it really has to do with the LCD display here. You know, the fonts are so small here. I have a hard time reading them with my dying eyes. They could easily filled up, you know, the screen here with the intensity and Kelvin temperature, rather than making them so tiny here on the right side of the screen. The second thing I would say is, you know, the buttons and dials here are all black, including the lettering, and they're very difficult to see before I turn the lights on in the studio. So it'd have been nice if they'd have painted these white or have them glow or something, or make it red, the same color as the aluminum housing here, so it's easier to see in low light. But other than literally these two little things, this is a great light. And the GVM brand in general, I can always highly recommend. If you're interested in this light, it retails for $3.99. However, there are some substantial discounts on this all the time, so check out my affiliate links down below for the latest pricing. But that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.